So by now, most of us know the Kevin Durant trade saga is over and he's staying with the Brooklyn Nets, at least for the foreseeable future. The other day, they put out a press release basically saying that the organization and Kevin Durant got together and they've decided to move forward together to try to create a championship team, essentially. I got a lot of thoughts, but honestly, first things first, I'm happy he's staying in Brooklyn. I've said countless times that's the best spot for him to be if he wants to win a championship, because if a trade did happen, the Nets were going to make sure they got what they felt was proper value, and I'm not mad at him for it. One of the pieces about the press conference that did intrigue me is that it started with Steve Nash and I. It's from Sean Marks' perspective, so I get the I part, but what's interesting is when we all know Kevin Durant wanted Sean Marks and Steve Nash fired, or he was going to continue to want to trade. I thought the Sean Marks part was crazy. I didn't think the Steve Nash part was crazy. Even me personally, I want Steve Nash out of there. I don't think he's the right coach for this organization. I think they need a coach who's battle tested, who's been to the finals before, at least been to deep playoff runs. Do I think Steve Nash doesn't have a future as a coach in the NBA? I'm not saying that. I just don't think this team with these expectations were the right team for him to coach at his first time as a head coach. So the fact that the press release had Steve Nash's name mentioned makes me think they're not going to fire him, makes me think they're going to have him be their head coach next year. I don't love that, but it is what it is. Another thing, when I look at the Nets roster, the starting five looks great. I'm still worried about some front court depth outside of Nick Claxton. Who's your backup center? I think Ben Simmons at center would be very interesting. Could be similar to the Draymond Green situation when he used to play center for the Warriors back in their 2015, 2016 days. He's 6'10", 6'11", so he definitely has the height for it. I just don't think we've seen that from him solely because he's played alongside of Joel Embiid the his entire career. But I've said before, I like the Royce O'Neal pickup. Joe Harris is coming back. Seth Curry is still there. Like, I like their team. I really do. But one thing that I thought was really interesting is what Patrick Beverley had to say about it on Twitter. Basically said that the whole Kevin Durant saga was holding up guys from getting paid and finding out basically where they're going to be playing / working coming in this upcoming season. They have a little exchange back and forth. Hashtag blame KD starts to go around. And I don't think people were really seeing what Patrick Beverley was saying there. I don't think Patrick Beverley, and he even said himself, was blaming Kevin Durant for what was going on. He just said the way it happened was not good for business, how everything was so public. And I've said this before countless times. I don't want to beat a dead horse of how these last couple of years, the Kevin Durant situation, the Ben Simmons situation, Anthony Davis situation is going to lead to, and I'll say maybe being a little dramatic about it. I've been saying it might lead to a lockout, but I'll say it'll definitely at least lead to some changes in the collective bargaining agreement. I feel like we all could agree there. An easy example is maybe there'll be some stipulations on how soon you can be traded, or at least how soon you can request a trade after signing a max contract. Some max contracts have trade kickers where if a player does get traded, they get 10 to 15% extra money from the team that traded them away. Maybe if a player requests a trade, they have to then pay the team they requested a trade from 10 to 15%. Nothing crazy, but maybe a couple of little things like that I could see being implemented in the next collective bargaining agreement. Nevertheless, it was super ironic that it was Patrick Beverley being vocal about how the whole Kevin Durant saga played out was messing up other players' opportunities to get signed or get traded to other teams, because shortly thereafter, I think it was like a day or two after the Nets made the announcement that Kevin Durant was staying, we find out that the Lakers made a trade for Patrick Beverley. And at first glance, I can see some people saying, well, they could have did that forever ago. That had nothing to do with Kevin Durant. Well, it has everything to do with Kevin Durant, because if Kevin Durant did get traded, then the Nets would likely blow that team up. They mean Kyrie's now available, which the Lakers, at least or rumors were, the Lakers felt they could get Kyrie Irving if Kevin Durant was moved. So you can't get Kyrie now, so you get what I guess you feel is the second best thing available in Patrick Beverley. Now we're getting more reports that the Jazz are now looking to move Donovan Mitchell before training camp even starts, because some of the teams that have been rumored to be interested in Donovan Mitchell, the Knicks, the Heat, were kind of sort of also interested in Kevin Durant. Once they realized Kevin Durant wasn't available, maybe they'll be more willing to give more or go all in on a Donovan Mitchell trade. But once Donovan Mitchell gets traded from the Jazz, they have a bunch of good role players that would also likely get traded to other potential playoff or contending teams. Look at Mike Conley, Bogdanovich. They have good players. I don't want you to watch this and think I'm blaming Kevin Durant for what happened. I think it was a legit domino effect of what happens when a player of Kevin Durant's caliber wants to be traded. It's an impossible trade. I said it from the beginning, the trade was impossible. I never really thought he was going to get traded because his value was way too high and a team wouldn't be willing to give what Kevin Durant is really worth. To wrap this up, honestly, I'm happy that he's staying in Brooklyn. I'm excited to see that team next year, and I'm very curious to see what other moves teams make right before the basically coming weeks before training camp, because I guarantee you we're going to see at least a couple of more moves before the season starts.